Welcome to the Don't Die Rusty podcast. I'm Rick Hansen, and we will be talking about living, not dying. We're all on this adventure together, and we will be interviewing people who inspire us to live our best lives. People with various backgrounds who will walk us down the trails they took to not die rusty. Adventure in life are many things to many people. It could be a sprint or an endurance race, but with each adventure, we become a better version of us. We hope you keep chasing those dreams, being the best you, and of course, don't die rusty. Well, Don't Die Rusty Nation, we're here today with Ricky Bruley, and here is probably one of the guys that affected my life in a good way. I've had those people that have affected my life in the bad way, and it's Kelly Lovelace, and we're in Oaks, North Dakota.
Oaks, North Dakota.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Below zero.
Below zero.
And it is, I've been here once before, but it was summer. I don't know if I'll come back in the winter.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a little bit cold.
Just a little.
Just a wee bit.
But you know what? The company is warm.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, that's good. Look at him.
I love that.
And it's about who you surround yourself, and we'll get into that stuff too. I'm going to do a light introduction of Kelly Lovelace and why he's affected my life, and then we'll probably start telling stories and stuff. But Kelly came into my life. I knew Kelly. He was a pastor at a church in town, the Nazarene church in town, but he was a hunter, and I was working in a hunting store in Belfouche, South Dakota called Triggers at the time. And we'd talk, and I have to admit, and I'm not trying to be arrogant, but I had a little local notoriety. I shot a big buck, and people kind of knew this stuff. But Kelly would come in, and we'd talk hunting, and we'd talk other things, and just lightly. You know, Kelly was never one to push anything on me. He came into the store. This is 2 to 3 days prior. I had my wife came home and said, "We're getting a divorce." And that's the way it was. I was spiraling into the deepest, darkest places that I could go. Kelly walks into the store. It was one of those things that had hit me hard because when I was going through this, like, I look back at my life now, and I was living a filled life because things were going good. And when things are going good, you don't need to ask for anybody's help. You don't need to ask for anybody's advice. You don't need to, things are going good. People talk to you. You don't have to talk to them. I was questioning my life. I was questioning other things. And Kelly walked into the store, and I told him that what I was going through, it wasn't so much the Kenny Rogers song where Tommy stopped and locked the door, but but Kelly came into my life, and for an hour we talked. It started a process in my life from being a filled life to starting to understand that you need to live a fulfilled life. And I'm going to get emotional during this podcast, but people don't understand what you did. Gee, many cripes.
Get it.
But he came in, and we talked for an hour or so, and it was about spirituality. It was about life. And I want to thank you. And we're here now I think people need to know that you can be living that great life, and then things happen. So this relationship started, and it wasn't, and here's what I like about you, Kelly. You still didn't push a religion on me. You pushed, I wouldn't even say it made me realize spirituality. And I think that everybody needs to know that there's something bigger out there. In my life, in going through that stuff, I'm not kidding you. In that early part, probably that first 2 weeks, there was times that I didn't know if I was going to make it. I felt like a failure. I felt like there was nothing in my life that was worthwhile. But I'm here now, and we're doing the Don't Die Rusty podcast. It made me make an impression on people's lives that things can be bad, but they can get better. And I know I'm emotional now, but my life right now, and I have to laugh now. I have to smile because the journey that has happened is like the sunrises that I take pictures of. But there were times you were walking in the night and there is no moon. But now I am fulfilled, and I thank you for that. So, like I said, you know the story, and you walked in the store and you told me about God, and you told me about Jesus, and you told me you helped me lift my life up. And I want to thank you.
Well, you're welcome, I guess. I like relationship is important to me. And a lot of times I think as a pastor, we can get caught up in religion. And it should never be about the religion. It should be about the relationship. And so if we can pour into people and invest in them, I think that's the way Jesus did it, honestly. And I don't want to get too deep into religion with you guys today, but unless that's where it goes.
It depends where it goes,
But when I introduce myself to people, and in this town it's tough because it's really small.
Yeah.
But like when I was living in Spearfish, I never introduced myself as Pastor Kelley or Reverend Lovelace or any of that stuff because I want to get to know people. And that can be a block, right? When they find out what you do and then they begin to define you by that. And I've always been of the belief that I'm not defined by what I do. There's an understanding of who I am. And then because I know who I am, the action and the behavior comes out of that, right? And I think, like for you, Rick, you had some things that were kind of wrapped up in what you did as part of your identity. And what I wanted to do was help you walk through that and get to know who you were, right? That's huge. The other side of this is it's tough to find that definition in the world. So where do we look? And for me personally, I had to come to terms with that as a young man and understanding who Jesus made me to be, right? So what I'm created to be, and then out of what I'm created to be, I know what I'm supposed to do, and that gives you purpose. So just a little bit, I guess, is that okay? At 18, I had it in my mind that I wanted to help people through the toughest time of their life, right? Like at 18, coming out of a senior year of high school, coming out of a government class, I had some really positive male role models in my life, teachers and coaches. Those guys helped me a lot. I came out of a pastor's home, but my dad was like not around very much. So these guys kind of filled that gap for me. And so they really poured into me and helped me to get where I was. And so what I began to realize is I just want to pass that forward. Like I want to help people. Initially, as a teenager, you're thinking, well, high school sucks. So I want to help teenagers. So my idea was to be a coach and a teacher because those were the guys who were most influential on me. And then when I got to college, God really changed that in my life. And so he called me to be a pastor, which is the last thing that I ever wanted to be. And I just felt like in my understanding of what it was, I need to help change the view of what this looks like when it comes to a spiritual relationship or your spiritual side of life, because I think it's all intertwined. You can't break them and separate them and put pieces here and there and compartmentalize all of it, right? So that's just like where I was. And somehow God took me from Olathe, Kansas to Spearfish, South Dakota. Go figure, So when I introduced myself to people in Spearfish, it wasn't ever Reverend this or Pastor this. It was, hey, I'm Kelly Lovelace. Good to meet you. I like to hunt, and I hunt and fish and did all those things. And you're right. That's where we kind of started to connect was through Triggers and a guy named Justin that owned it, the owner, And the truth was I'd go in there and bug Justin. I just made it part of my weekly routine to go in there and bug him. Well, then Rick started working there, and that's how we got to know each other. Right?
Yeah, and it's funny. We did an episode with Fiona Pierce. She'd saved a kid's life in Utah. But we talk about her tire got sliced by a rock. She had to go, everything that went through that day that she ended up in that place where she saved that kid's life. That's what's amazing to me. Like, we can call it whatever we want, intervention, whatever, or what, but it's amazing how people come into people's lives at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And when you walked through that door and we had that talk and you told me stuff, the things that maybe I didn't want to hear, some of them, and some of them that I did need to hear. And you brought that sense of worth at that moment anyway into my life. You still question it. But here's the deal. I consider we were acquaintances until that time.
Yeah.
And then we became friends.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been friends a long time now.
Yeah.
But when there has to be there has to be something that brings people to those points. And and that's in everybody's life. And you can decide which way to turn and which way not to turn.
Right.
I've talked about it, I think, in another podcast. And I talk about it now in the aspect that I think that's when you realize those people that are around you that make you better are going to change your life, and you got to hang around those good people. You got to shed the things that are bad and keep moving forward. So me and you start doing stuff. We could start having breakfasts every morning.
Yeah.
I mean, not every morning, but it was once a week.
Yeah, the goal was once a week.
And it was once
at
a week.
least once a week. Yeah.
And then you gave me verses to read, and to be honest, I had questions about. I grew up Catholic, but I had never had the questions answered. I had thoughts. This is just what you do, but I have never read the Bible like I read it when you gave me that camouflage Bible. I read it from page to beginning to end. I've never done that.
Right.
It enlightened me in some things, and you gave me verses to read. But besides that point, then we'd have our breakfast. We'd talk about other things. We'd talk about hunting. We'd talk about this and that. And then we would, you got me to start coming and listening at church. It's about the thought of how you're making yourself better. And that's what Don't Die Rusty is about, is becoming a better you. Like I said, I was living a field life. Things are going good. And then the hammer drops and it's not so good. You gave me the strength to get through that. And so me and you went and did things together. Yeah. And I told you we're going to go here. Yeah. You know where I'm going right now.
I knew there was no way to avoid it.
Rick, you'll appreciate this. Yeah. I need to bring in that Ricky doesn't know any of this story, because I didn't really want him to know the story. I want him to ask questions.
We wanted to save it for...
We did.
Yeah.
Kelly had a muzzleloader tag. I said, well, I'll go hunting with you. And we drove up to a place and we went hunting, and it's public land. It's a large tract of public land. And actually, you know, where you've hunted there before. Anyway, we were up there, and it was snow, and it was deep. It was like knee deep.
Post-holing, man.
We are post-holing. I got him sweating.
And keeping up with this guy. I call him the machine, because he just goes and goes and goes. And I'm just like, dude, you're going to kill me. I'm going to have a heart attack over here.
So we couldn't go any further, and we start hiking in. And there was a nice whitetail. There was a couple nice whitetails, and this is the first time. There's a couple nice whitetails. And we get him set up, and he misses. Okay, you know. And I'm going, oh, could be a long day. And then we hike some more, and we see these muleys, and we sneak up over this ridge, and was there 3 or 4 of them?
There's 4 of them in there. Yeah. One of them was like,
he was big.
Yeah. He'll make your heart beat. Like,
you look a little dejected right now. Well, so I'm worried about where this is going to go.
So we sneak up, and I think we were 100 yards or so. We had to get close because it's a muzzle loader. And we're sneaking there, and he took the shot, and he missed again.
And they didn't move.
And they didn't move.
Right? They just kind of looked around like, what is that?
And I'm going, oh my gosh. And he
reload.
He reloaded.
Yeah, so I'm reloading,
and he missed again. So then we followed him because it's snow. We can get over to where they went, and we followed the tracks. And now we're going on the Baton Death March because it's snow and we're sweating,
and we're in there.
We are in there, so we're not coming out. We get up to where we can see him again, and he missed 2 more times.
Yeah, it was a rough day.
So we're in deep enough that it's late. Like we need to start heading back to the vehicle, and so we're heading back to the vehicle. Kelly says, he's like dejected, like he's like a whooped dog.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like this isn't normal. And I do hit things. It's like, oh yeah, sure you do.
I didn't know what he had heard. I went out with Justin Raber antelope hunting, and I didn't have any problems there. Boom, knocked him down. He fell like a bag of wet cement, and we were like, woo! And so I didn't know what Rick had heard, or because I know he worked with Justin and stuff, and so this guy just can't shoot, man. Like this guy's terrible.
And I'm walking out, and I'm ahead, and I'm just thinking, oh my God, this. I guess we're not packing anything out though, so that's good. We're just packing ourselves out, I guess. But so we get up to this tree, like he says, I want to shoot this tree. He's 50 yards away. I want to see where I'm shooting, and he didn't even hit the tree.
Yeah.
Wow. So your
sights were off. Yeah, somehow the sights got bumped.
Yeah.
And I had just shot the thing the day before to make sure that I was on. So somewhere between overnight or the ride out, it got bumped. So it was a rough day.
Yeah,
it was a rough day. But throughout this rough day, like I said, and this is a good segue. But throughout the rough day, you're dejected. But we had these conversations. Mm-hmm. Yep. So we started making fun of it. You know what I mean? Because
what do you do?
Yeah, and this is where he became the original THP. I call him the hunting preacher. And that's where I think I've always called him the THP after that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We didn't get anything. You ended up getting something later.
Yep.
But it was one of those days, at least I got that day of conversation, because that was still like 3 weeks, that was about 3 weeks after finding out the divorce thing. And I have questions and stuff. And some people it hits hard, some people it doesn't. But this thing hit me hard because I felt like a failure. And Kelly's having a rough time too. And I don't want him to feel like I understand where he's coming from, because I don't want him to feel like a failure. Mm-hmm. He did fail, but no, I'm just kidding.
7 times.
But I just put out a post today about the 3 things that saved my life. And it was Kelly, it was my mom, and it was the wild. Mm-hmm. I was with 2 of them right there.
And by the wild, you're talking about the wilderness, not the hockey team.
No, not the hockey team.
They can't save you, buddy.
No, but it's being in the woods.
Yeah.
But I had 2 of them that day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when things start affecting your life and you start seeing this stuff, it makes you realize how good life is. And like I said, everybody goes through that roller coaster of emotion. Mm-hmm. But within that time span, I'm going to say a month, because I'll be conservative here, but I didn't start feeling like my life was worthless. And I understood that things are going to get better. Mm-hmm. And we're going to go in a good direction. And so in that aspect, I started seeing that there's positiveness, and that, you know what, in this life, we're not going to take what people think of us. We're not going to take any material things. The only thing we're going to take in our life when we die is our memories from this earth.
Right.
Because I'm not going to, you can't use money in heaven, can you?
Mm-mm.
So
not that I know of.
And so here's
You
the
won't
part.
need it.
No, but here's the part that's interesting because I've been listening to this new country singer. They'll probably put him in Americana, but Dylan Gossett and me and you kind of had this conversation too, which is, and then of course Kelly, when I called him up to talk about coming up here, but I said Dylan Gossett sings a song, "It's Our Time," or I think it's Cole. I can't remember exactly what song, but it says, "Sometimes you got to die to live."
Mm-hmm.
And Kelly says to me, I think the Bible says that.
It does.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And it was funny because I go, gee, many cripes, another word of wisdom from Kelly Lovelace.
It's not my word of wisdom, but
in that instance, you're black inside here, and then you start it. You have to. In my life, I have to admit, when I went through that, it's not, the sunrise didn't come right away.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the sunrise comes in anybody's life. There's always that glow before the sunrise. So you can start to see, but you can't, the sun isn't up yet. So it's not coming down to warm you yet. Mm-hmm. So you have to go through the trials of life to get to that point. And it's funny because I'm begging Kelly to say, have Jesus hit me with, or have God hit me with lightning and say, your life is better. Mm-hmm. But it didn't. He said, and he keeps on saying, be patient.
Yeah.
Be patient.
There's something about the crucible, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about the hardships. Going through the crucible that helps to harden us and form us. Yeah. And then I think personally, that's where your identity begins to be developed and you begin to really know who you are. It's the hardships. It's not those mountaintop moments, right? It's when you're facing it and you got a choice. You either point yourself into the wind and keep taking steps, or you turn your back and let the storm blow you wherever it's going to end up blowing you. Mm-hmm. And one way you can be focused, like if I'm facing into the wind and I'm moving towards the storm, at some point I'm going to get to the backside of the storm, right? But if I let the storm continue to blow me around, how long is it going to be before I get out of it? Mm-hmm. And so if we can, that way, when we're focused and we know the backside of the storm, at least we have a goal to get to the backside of it. The other way, you're lost. You're just chaos. You're just going wherever it takes you. And there's no specific point in life. And I think that's where we begin to become miserable. Yeah. And I don't think that's the way life is supposed to be. I don't think it's meant to be miserable. And we think it's easy to just focus on ourselves and deal with our own stuff. And then not worry about what he's going through. It's not my business. Not worry about what she's going through. It's not my business, or what they're going through. I don't think that's the way we're created. I think that we need to see where and how we can help.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that story, and I'm naturally introverted, and that's why I hang out with people like Rick, because I need extroverts to help foster
round you out.
You know, when I went to college, I had a friend who was very extroverted. He got me out meeting people and all that kind of stuff. Like Rick, I also grew up in the Catholic Church. I went very secular after that. You know, just kind of, I don't know if there was a wound that was left there or what it was, but it was just, I separated myself from that. And, you know, you get to a certain point where, you hit a real tough road. And I've had conversations with people where they're like, oh, yep, that's typical. You know what I mean? Somebody had a hardship and now they're following Jesus, and then kind of roll their eyes. And it's like, well, until you're there, and then you can experience what all of that can do for you, it's hard to really judge. And I have a similar story in the same way too, in that I had somebody invite me to church. I was going through a tough time. I was in a, poor relationship. There was my dad. There's just a lot of things all kind of coming together at once. And you always feel like you're super strong. You can handle it. You can get through it. You hide your emotions. You bury it, but it's going to come up at some point. Right. And just having certain people in my life, that person invited me to go to church, and I thought, I'll check it out, and was kind of just, checking it. But then there was all these people around me that suddenly I started finding out that I was like, oh, I didn't know you go to church every Sunday, you know?
Mhm.
And then it's like, well, there's got to be something to this, you know? It's not all just about, you know, the teachings of the Catholic Church. It's so much more than that.
Mhm.
And just the community, like you're saying, you've got people, you surround yourself with people that keep you held accountable. You do the same thing. You develop accountability partners. You check in on each other. How's it going? What's happening? You know, and you know, Rick and I lost touch for a little while, you know, and I got to a point in my life where I was like, you know, I need to surround myself with good people.
Right.
And he's one of them, you know, and so many others I could go on. There's a list. And then there's also a list of people that I need to keep them at arm's length, you know, and not that I wouldn't be there for them if they need it, but just, you know, surround yourself with good people and have good conversations like we're having right now. I can't say it any better than how you guys phrased it. You know, it's just, I love how that worked out. And there might've been a point in my life where I could go, oh, well, it was just really lucky or a coincidence that happened or that happened or that happened. But now I can proclaim that, you know, God speaks through people, speaks through us. And these people come into your life for a reason, you know, and you have to embrace that. And I often think about that, like, why did that happen? And even if it's now when you go through trials because you're going to, just because now you have a belief system doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect. Right.
Or easy.
Right. But you get to that point and you go, you know, a great example is my dad's passed and gone, but I have a father, you know,
right.
I have a friend that I can always talk to no matter what, whenever. And maybe that's not, you know, maybe it's different for you. Maybe it's a different, you know, religion or belief system. But to your point, like you said, right in the beginning, is understanding there's more, there's a higher power. There's something there that is in control and you can always reach out.
So, yep.
Well, and I think that we grow up and as males think that we have to be the strength. We have to be everything that is stoic in life, but we have to learn that we can't be afraid to say, you know what, I'm going through a hard time. Can you come walk along with me? The wild, the forest, the being outdoors to me is my church, because in the aspect that I feel freer when I'm walking a trail or walking in the woods, that I'm surrounded by this beauty. I'm surrounded by nature. But if me and you we went shed hunting, we went looking for stuff, and even on that hunt, we're talking, and it's like you have that, I don't know, there's something about being out in the wild that makes you more free to express your feelings. Because we can go out and say, hey, it's just, things just pop into your head when you're hiking or walking. And I can say, hey, what do you think about that, Kelly?
Right.
Instead of having four walls or around us where we can feel like the walls are closing. When we're out in the wild, it's not.
Right.
And we can experience what God gave us. And to me, that brings a new life. It brings new energy. It brings something to me. That's why I'm outside most of the time, because I have to say, you know, I mean, our conversations, our friendship, our life that has came, and you've seen the journey, but you have, when you're living a field life, you don't see the little things. When you're living a fulfilled life, you see the flowers that are in the grass. You see so many little things. You take in that view and know that you're not going to see it tomorrow, because it's never going to be the same. And when you start realizing that we are only on this earth for so long, we need to make it the best that we can be. And you can tell me if I'm wrong, because you would, and I don't care. But every day I strive to be the best person that I can be. And I believe that if we are striving to be the best people that we can be, that we're going to make the world a better place. Because if we can, if this episode strikes one, maybe two people, then we've done something good.
Right.
So being better within ourselves, to see the little things, to feel fulfilled, to know that tomorrow is a gift, today is a gift. We don't know. And in that instance, I'm going to go in a different direction here, but in that instance, when you know that it's a gift, because after you got me through that hardship, I kept on calling and asking you because we knew my mom wasn't in a good shape.
Yep.
And so I call you about that. And it's interesting because my mom would try to talk about mortality when we would have conversations, but I would always take the conversation other way. It's because I knew that in the end, when we're born, we sign the contract that we're going to die. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But so I would always change the conversation to good things because I know I knew that. But I would call you and ask you questions, and it's interesting because I got to work. I felt guilty when my mom died. Actually, I felt guilt and I felt anger. I felt guilt for one thing because for 2 years, I called my mom every morning. Could be a 5-minute conversation, could be a 20-minute conversation. And I had just been back for her birthday. And I talked to her that whole week. And on the weekend, I went elk hunting with a friend of mine. His nieces had cow tags in the Black Hills, and I went along with them. And for some reason, there was something saying to me, like, you should call your mom. But I'm thinking, I usually didn't call her on weekends because I would call her on weekends. But I mean, I just felt on Monday morning, I'm going to tell her the stories of what I saw on this hunt. And so we'd have a good conversation, but something kept gnawing at me like that. And then on Monday morning, I call her like I always did going to work. And my dad answers the phone and said, your mom went to the hospital in an ambulance. And my mom has never been to the ambulance, and we'll let you know what's going on. And so immediately I get to work and I text my sister and I said, let me know. And I called her and she said, I'll call you back. And I walked into the dispatch because I work at a lumber yard and I'm the yard manager there. And I walked into the dispatch and I said, I may be leaving here. I do not know. I'll give the head guy a call. And I told my dispatcher that, and my sister calls and said, you need to get here now. And I called Cindy, my wife, and I said, this is what's going on. She said, we're going, and we got in the car and it didn't take me long to get to her. But where I'm going with this is, we got there and she was medicated, so she wasn't feeling any pain. And I felt guilty because I hadn't called her when she wasn't in that situation. And I talked to my sister Deb, and it was my dad, it was Cindy, it was my mom in the room. And I said, because I wanted to be alone because there's people in there. And there's things that you want to say to people that, and I don't know if she heard it. This is where you come in.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know if she heard it. And so we had this conversation. And then everybody came in. And then later, I still remember, I think it was about 3:10. I don't remember. And then the AM. And, you know, you can only say so many goodbyes anyway. And so I watched my mom die. And the cool things about the people you surround yourself with. So Cindy and I Cindy drove my dad's vehicle back to his house. My sister and at that time, her fiance, now husband, drove my dad back to his house. And like I said, it's 3 a.m, roughly. And one of my best buddies knew about what had happened. And he gives me a call like it is before the sunrise. And he said, "You get your butt up and go take a picture of that sunrise." Jesus. Anyway, and that's what I mean about surrounding people that care for you. And I did. I still have that sunrise, but and what I'm saying about that is, so in the end, things are going, and then I text you, and then I call you, and you help me through that anger of not really being able to say goodbye in a good, like I wanted to. But you know what? I mean, you help me. It's not my choice.
Right.
You know, It's not. But you have to believe that you were a good enough person that they knew how you felt. And that's where the last 12 years of, or it's longer than 12 years, but the last 15 years will go.
Yeah, that's probably accurate. Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's where this friendship has blossomed. And that's where I thank you, because you need to have that person to go, "Kelly, I don't understand this darn stuff. And can you help me out here?" And it's not that you're giving me answers. You're giving me something to think about.
Yeah. Yep. I tell people this often. I don't have all the answers. I wish I did. That'd be nice, right? But at least I think I can help point people in the right direction. And if I don't have it, if I don't know it, let's find it together.
Yeah.
And I do believe that this is relational, man. Like, this is one of the things I think our culture has moved away from, is this type of relationship. So you have specifically men. I think women tend to be more social, right? And so they probably have more of that base where they can go to and talk. Men aren't talkers by nature. Like, I think the difference between men and women is men have a max 10,000 words they use in a day, and women are anywhere between 60 and 100,000. So they're blowing us out of the water when it comes to communicating and using words. And you can find those in different studies. So for men to find that deep relationship, and there is a little bit of a difference. Like, men tend to be a little less trusting. And I do believe it goes back to some of the things you guys have both talked about here, like the masculinity side of it, having to be the strong one, having to be the silent one, and then never feeling like you live up to that, and trying to feel like I'm good enough. At least today I was good enough. Right.
Mhm.
And pushing that way. And then who do you talk to about those things? We're not good at developing these types of relationships where we can trust people, and there's not a lot of genuineness, it doesn't matter where you live. Like you've got this show that's going on and in the lives of people. And I feel like that if you can be genuine, and then you can start to surround yourself and invest in those relationships in a positive way.
Mhm.
And it is an investment, right?
For sure.
The world's about taking, and I've seen people use others like a box of Kleenexes. They just one after the other. And I've never wanted to be that type of person. I feel like if we're not investing in somebody, if we're not walking with somebody, then we're kind of missing it,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And we need to have these deep relationships in our lives. And I've developed those. Rick is one of those guys that, like you said, it's been 15 years, man. Like from that moment in that shop, it's probably been 15 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Or longer. I don't.
Well,
yeah.
I told you this before we started. My son, Levi, was born in 06. We moved to Spearfish in 07. That had to be 08 or 09.
Yeah.
Right. And so he was 2 or 3 years old. And I just to add a little bit to that story.
Yeah.
Previously, Justin Raber had told me, have you talked to Rick lately? And I go, no, I haven't talked to Rick, because you really need to talk to him, man. He's going through a tough time. And I go, okay, well, I'll try to track him down. That day we met in the shop. I don't know if you remember this or not, but we bumped into each other at the Subway in Spearfish.
Now that you say that, I do remember that.
We bumped into each other there, and I didn't have any idea he was headed up there. But like I said, I used to go bug Justin and Angela like once a week. Yeah. That was my goal. Mm-hmm. And we run into each other up there. My son fell asleep from Spearfish to Belfouche. He fell asleep in the truck. So I just left him in the truck. Bad parenting 101, right? But I could see the truck, and it was just one of those moments, and I'm going to call it a divine moment, where I really struggle with coincidence or irony. Right. I think that we're crossing people's paths for a reason. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of those moments. And the whole time we talked, not one person, poor Justin, not one customer came into the Triggers. No. In the middle of all of that. And here we are talking, right? Yeah. And man, he just like, I just remember the place that you were at, the valley that you were in was so dark, and you were just unloading everything, man. And I'm like, my heart's breaking for you, because I can't imagine that. Like I literally can't imagine what you were going through. And I just knew I needed to do something to help this guy, right? Like, what can I do to help him? Mm-hmm. And like, you can't give a pastor a microphone and not expect him to talk a little bit about Jesus. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm praying in that moment, like, Lord, what do you want me to do here? Like, what's the deal? And so we started talking, and I started to respond back a little bit about different life situations and choices. And then there was a moment when I looked at him and said, now, Rick, I've been your friend right now up to this point. Now I'm going to be a pastor. You remember that? Mm-hmm. I do. And Rick had told me, I've been running up to the tops of the hills. I'm just trying to find God. I just don't know what's going on. It's just a mess. And I'm like, dude, you don't have to run up on top of the highest peak to find him. He's right here, right now. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's the kind of God I believe in. He's ever present. He's always there. Yep. And you know what? He's such a gentleman. If you want him to butt out of your life, he will. But that he's not going to leave. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. He's wanting a relationship. And so then we started talking about relationship, right? And where to find him. And so that's a big part of this. And if you want to look at that as a crutch or some, wacky idea or whatever that is, that's fine. But you can't look at the world and not think that something created this. Mm-hmm. Like if we're talking about the wilderness and we're talking about getting out into it, you can't look at those things and go, well, it's just happened. Like just an explosion caused all this. No, there's order to it in detail, mm-hmm. right?
Yep.
And so when you look at life and how it plays out, we have these opportunities that are being afforded to us to invest in other people. I talk about this a little bit at funerals, almost every funeral here in the last 4 or 5 years, probably just legacy, mm-hmm. and how we've left fingerprints on people, right? So Rick is telling you about all the fingerprints that have been left on him in our relationship by me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's left some fingerprints on me in my life. You know,
I don't doubt that.
We went through. I went through some stuff, and you know, maybe you look at it a little differently. For me, it was like my career imploded, but it's not a career; it's a calling. And so, what was going on at my church at the time had become an utter mess, just a complete. It's just nuts, right?
Yeah.
And so, Rick called me up one day, and he goes, "Hey, dude, you want to go shed hunting?" And I go, "Yeah, I need to go do something, man."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we jumped in his little yellow, whatever that was.
Xterra.
Yeah. I said, "Man, you know, everybody knows what car you drive. You better be finding something different." And he goes, "Oh, I hide it." And I'm like, "Yellow in a green forest? Yeah, good luck." But we jumped in his yellow Xterra, and he took me up into the hills. And I just needed that, man.
Yeah.
You know, like this is the way it should be, right? These are two-way streets. It's not just me. It's not like Rick is just getting all of this out of me, but we have a friendship, and he pours into me, and he helps me, and he talks to me, and it's an investment. So I've got Rick's fingerprints on my life, especially in some of those tough times.
For sure.
That was one of those moments when I wasn't sure what I was going to do, right? And I ended up getting a call from my boss who moved me here to Oaks, and Rick was one of the first people I talked to outside of my wife about that whole deal. And it was tough, like just to move, because I didn't want to keep moving my kids around. Right. Yeah. And we had a really sweet place up in the hills. So it's like hard to leave all of that. Yeah. And Rick helped me work through some of that. Right. And I got a couple other guys that I lean on in some of those moments. And I think it's important to have those people in your life. Like, that you're building relationship with, and that they can call baloney on you when you're making a dumb decision. Yeah. Right. Or they can go, "Dude, you're right where you need to be. Just keep pushing forward. You're going to see the daylight, man." Right. Yeah. And so, having said that, I believe that's what this God of the world, the reason Jesus came was to create relationship, not religions and rules, but a relationship. And that should change you. Right. So if I'm pouring into Rick and Rick's pouring into me, that should change me, right? Like it should make me see things a little different, more like Rick in the same way, vice versa. So as we walk together, we begin to kind of rub off and leave fingerprints, and those fingerprints affect how we see the world, how we view relationships, what love really looks like. Yeah. Right. And I think we get sold a false bill of goods by the world. And they tell you as a man that you're got to be the strong one, and you got to do this, and you got to do that, and you got to lead. And you know what happens when you're in a situation where no one's following? Like, who are you leading? And that can include your wife or your kids, or right. So now what? Well, you need to have some people around you that will help you to see. And to see properly. And I think that's a good thing. Like somebody from outside the box looking in and going, "Dude, let's get it together and let's go." And so if I can be that for somebody, I want to be that for somebody, right? Rick happened to be the somebody that God brought into my life. And so the relationship goes both ways. Like it's not one-sided at all. So just know that, right? Yeah. Like it's not one-sided. So these stories, like these journeys, it's the crucible, going back to that idea. It's this crucible that we're working through. Here's the thing. If we're willing to open our eyes and see what's in front of us and what's around us, you might just realize you're not absolutely alone in all of that.
Right. Amen, brother. Right. Amen to that. I mean, and similar type of deal when I had, a relationship that had failed, and I was going through a lot of those things. And it was one of those situations where, I was going to church and I was very involved, and things kind of started to shift where when I was first starting to go, it was like, hey, you got to treasure your relationship. You got to, always cherish your, we weren't married, but always cherish your significant other and all of those things. And I tried to do that. And then the message that started to speak to me was, if your relationship is toxic, you might need to go. You might need to separate yourself from that, because it was leading me down a very dark path. And so that's what I ended up having to do. And I really feel like I may not have had that strength to do that without God in my life. And when you kind of end it yourself, because there's a different story it's similar between me and Rick, but it's different in that I had to make that choice and I ultimately made that decision. And so you think like that might make it easier, or, in my head, it was just kind of like, yeah, I'm free and clear and freedom and all of that kind of stuff. And for some reason, so my best friend, Nate, he's an electrician and he gets a job up in the Minneapolis area. He lived in Albert Lea, which is like 2 hours south, and he needed a place to crash for 2 months. So come on in, man. I got a place for you to stay. How does there's no coincidence there. You know what I mean?
Right.
God was like, he needs help. And even though I didn't think I needed it, I needed it.
Yeah.
And so again, there's no coincidence. That was a plan that worked out that way. And he helped get me through that, and move on. And he doesn't even know it, he doesn't, he knows it now, but in the moment, I'm sure he was kind of like, but it was not purposeful. He wasn't, purposely seeking out a job to be there to help me. I'm sure that was a part of it, but it just, so to like you said, those moments I proclaim as, just God looking after us and making sure that we've got someone there for us,
Yep. See, we don't know what people are going through. No. We don't have a clue, man. Like what's going on behind that closed door or in that home, or we don't have any idea. I used to come to these guys and go, how can I get better? I love bow hunting, man. I'm like a bow hunting fool. And so I'm like, I used to shoot fingers with I had this old Matthews compound bow and I shot fingers, and I go, I got to get more accurate out to distance, because I moved up from Kansas and we weren't shooting distance, right? Like it's pretty close.
It was like he was shooting his muzzleloader with his bow.
Yeah, I was just
going to ask, was that shortly after the muzzleloader incident?
Yeah, it was before. So I'd ask him, because I knew he shoots. He still does. He shoots for different people, and so I'd ask him. I'd go in and go, well, what can I do to get more accurate? And he goes, get one of these. And he held up a release, right? and then I was like, okay, well, what else? Get a new bow. I'm like, you're just trying to sell me a bow. But I used to go in there and we'd talk. That's the way we talked, like that's what it was about. Like I was trying to constantly improve, and I just, like I said, I love to be out there with a bow in my hand, and Rick helped me a lot with that stuff. Him and Justin both. Bottom line is, if we're not willing to go and have some of these conversations and step out, then we don't know, right? And I had no clue what was going on in his life.
Yeah.
And he was, he had a little write-up in some piece of paper or magazine about his big deer, right? And so people knew who he was. And then he's always shooting elk. People knew who he was. They followed that yellow exterior around and try to find out where he was getting elk, And so you just never know. Like I never saw that. Like when Justin told me, you got to talk to Rick, I had no clue what he was going through.
Right.
And the depths of that. Right. And then just the utter, the word is rendered. Like you're just torn apart, man. Right. Like everything just, those are the moments when you have to get real with yourself. And I didn't know what he was going through, right? I don't remember when it was exactly, but it was after that day. Rick goes, I got some guns. Can you hold them for me? And I go, yeah. And so I put them in my gun safe.
But
And I'm not
No,
trying to,
no, but I was there.
but that's what we're talking about, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
this is the depths, like where we find ourselves sometimes.
Because you feel worthless. You
Mhm.
feel, I mean, I was feeling like I was worthless. And here's what I was listening to the conversation before, and it's interesting because I feel there was a time you gave me a Psalms and I read it every night and two, but there was a time I remember I woke up at 2 a.m. and it was like, you have to give up something to get something. And I woke up at 2 a.m. and said, I couldn't sleep. I was in that because you aren't getting, I'm pushing my body so hard. I was going to the gym twice a day and I was going,
Yeah, this guy lost a ton of weight. Like
you saw me at ATA and you thought I was sick. I was sick, but
wasn't eating, was working out twice a day, was still working at the lumber yard, and we had gone back to the lumber yard, right?
But so where I'm going with this is, I woke up at 2 a.m. and I couldn't sleep, and I thought, you know what? And we've talked about this before, but this isn't a death wish.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to, for some reason, Crow Peak has always been like a spiritual place for me, and I went to Crow Peak and I climbed it, but it was like I was giving myself. It was like, this is it, in the aspect of I'm giving myself to the higher spirit. I'm giving myself, I'm doing this because I believe in something and I know he'll take care of me. And I climbed it and climbed down. And that's when I think that switch turns on. Mm-hmm. You can see, I think in life, and you can correct me, but I think in life, there's a dimmer switch. It's not you just don't turn on the lights. And I think our conversations, the light starts getting a little brighter.
Yeah.
But when I did that, through our conversations, but when I did that and I decided to give myself, I started to you got to believe. And then I started becoming Rick again. Mm-hmm. I started becoming a better person. And that's where I think, because I'm always interested in that switch part, and I can look at myself, I can look at inward and say that was a time. So the wild and God and whatever else, that's where it helped me. So to go back, when I talked to you when my mom died, mm-hmm. And we need to we'll go further in a different direction here in a second, but I was on my way back and I said, I need to climb Crow Peak, mm-hmm. to Cindy, and go.
Yeah.
And that's where I cried. I screamed, I yelled, I asked. It's one of those places where I could just let it out and try to understand. I came back down, and I'm not saying I was completely better, but I understood a little bit better. Mm-hmm. I didn't blame myself for not calling, because how do I know?
Right.
And I didn't, in essence, I think people knew who would take her death the hardest. And it was, I mean, in some aspects, because it was me, because of the relationship, and because that's just who I am. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so that's those relationships. And we talked about legacy earlier. Mm-hmm. You were talking about legacy, and it's interesting because I don't have any kids of my own.
Right.
I have no kids of my own. And I was really getting scared of this thing because I wasn't going to have a legacy because I didn't have any kids of my own. And then I talked to a few older guys and females of this stuff. And what you just said is interesting, because they said it's not that you don't have any kids. of your own to leave a legacy, but you're leaving a legacy with the people that you're doing stuff with, the memories that I'm teaching these kids about life, and maybe, and we don't know, but maybe the Don't Die Rusty will leave a legacy in the aspect of people understanding that there's people out there. And if we can leave a mark, that's our legacy. It doesn't need to be the kid part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not putting that down. I'm just saying I was questioning myself.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, I was 6 years in Spearfish as a pastor there. And that was tough. Like that was the pastoring part was really tough. And when I look back, and I don't know who will be listening to this, and I'm not wanting to hurt anybody or offend anybody in any way, but when I look back, the people that I impacted the most, God showed me this, he had to, were not people in the church. They were people who were in the community. Mm-hmm. And probably at least two of my strongest relationships from Spearfish, this guy, Rick Hansen, and then Tom Owen. And God just showed me, I put you there for that reason. If that reason's not good enough, you're going to have to deal with it. And I look back at that and I go, and there's moments like my wife is an absolute saint. She's put up with a lot of stuff, and she's packed around a lot of hurt because of church people. Okay. So that was really, really, really hard on her. Mm-hmm. That 6 years. Her family lives in Iowa. It's 12 hours or more for her to see her family. So she moved away from family, and I mean it was a big choice to move there, and then the hurt that she packed out of it because she wasn't able to create some of these relationships. As a matter of fact, a lot of the relationships that were part of our life were very toxic. Okay. Yeah. So I literally had this conversation with her, and I told her, I said, I get it. Like, I understand the hurt that you received there, but looking at with Rick and with Tom and his family, it's like, I'd do it all over again if it was just for those two men. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Like what would have happened if I hadn't been there?
We don't
know, but the outlook looks cloudy. Right? Do you know what I mean? Like, and I believe in a God that provides, but I was that provision in that moment. Mm-hmm. And then these guys have poured back into me. So it's not, like I said, it's never just been a one-way street. This is two ways. Yeah. And so those guys have been, I still have a relationship with Rick. I still get a hold of Tom Owen. I turkey hunted with him last year. Yeah. Right. I didn't tell you I was in town.
I know. You didn't want to see me. I didn't want to see you miss.
Yeah. I didn't miss, brother. But this is what I'm talking about, right? Like I've asked different men different questions. There's a couple of questions that are huge, right, in our lives. So number one, and I want you guys to think about this. Number one, when did you first realize you were a man? Like, how was that manhood given to you? We don't have rites of passage for boys, right? Probably one of the main problems we have in the United States right now is that we don't have these specific rites of passages for boys so that they can grow up and be the men that they need to be. Okay. Yeah. So when did you realize that you were a man? Okay. And then the second question is, who is the person in your life? Who is the guy? Like, he's that guy. Boom. I can call him. I can lean on him. If I got a problem, he's going to do everything he can to get to me. If I can't get to him, like, who is that person? And do you have 1, 0, 2, or 3? Like, we don't have those types of relationships anymore where it's this bond, like this, we're bonded and we're going to work through this together. So those are two main questions. Most of the men that I've talked to in my ministry, they don't have, like, you want to call it a best friend? Let's call it a best friend. Who's your best friend? Like, that dude is your go-to. Mm-hmm. Who is that? And most of them don't have that. They just don't have that guy, right? Yeah. And the truth is, we got to have that guy. Yeah. We got to have him.
You do.
Okay. And if you could get 2 or 3 of those guys, I just listened to a martial arts instructor talk about 5 relationships you got to have. And you can have one guy that has multiple hats, but it comes down to having somebody that's spiritually there to keep you accountable, right and wrong, right? The guy that's going to celebrate you and not be jealous because of your accomplishments. Like, you got to have that guy, right? Especially like in the hunting world, jealousy can explode really quick.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
And so you want that guy that's not going to be jealous because of what you have acquired or accomplished, right? They're going to celebrate that, okay? You got to have that guy that is going to look at you and keep you accountable, like in everyday life, right? Like, that's a wrong move, dude.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You got to have that confidant that you can take anything to. That's a big deal. Like, who do we trust?
And that's probably one of the biggest deals to me, because I thought your relationships don't expand if you can't trust somebody.
Right.
And if I can't trust that I'm going to tell you something that's important to me, and you're not going to go tell all of Oaks, North Dakota, then why are we in a relationship?
Right. Or beat me up with it later.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, honestly, like when we talk about trust, that's the biggest one. It's not just the betrayal as far as, well, you told all those people, it's, you're going to come back and beat me up with it later. Like, I got enough people trying to beat me up. I don't need that in a close relationship. So, so you got to have that confidant, right? And then the final one is the guy that's like, this just happened. It's about to go down. And he grabs the bat and goes with you. And like, who do we need to take care of? No questions asked. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So those are the 5, right? And I do believe those are important to us as men, as the masculine side of things. We've got to have those kind of relationships, and we don't. Right. We oftentimes feel like islands unto ourselves. We don't have anybody that we can talk to. Part of it is we don't have anybody we can trust to talk to, but we haven't really gone out to seek that because we shouldn't have to. Right. Well, that's a lie. We're made for relationship, and we need each other. Right. So saying that, there's people that are going through life and they're buying into the lie, believing that no one else understands what's going on and no one is dealing with what I'm dealing with. And that's just not true either. Right. Like, there's multiple people and in this world, multiple men in this world that are dealing with some of the same stuff. And we're all building walls instead of trying to figure out how we can help each other get through it.
Yeah.
So hunting, going back to that, has helped me to walk into some of these relationships. Like, this passion that I have for that has helped me to build these relationships and forge those, right? Like, relationship is hard. Let's just start there, right? So Rick has to put up with a guy who took muzzleloader hunting, this novice of a dude that can't hit a wet paper bag at 2 feet, whatever was going through his mind in that moment, he didn't leave me. He didn't leave me out there in the middle of all that and go, I'm done with you, man. Yeah. You suck. Right. And he didn't go, well, as soon as I get him home, I'm done. I'm not ever hanging out with that dude again. And we're not ever going hunting together because he can't cut it. He never did that to me, And the world tells you to dump those people, but that's part of building a relationship. You accept that person for who they are in a lot of ways and their personality. And we want to work, like we're working together to get better. Right? Like, if you don't have those people in your life that are working with you to get better and you're helping work with them to get better, we're in a dangerous place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and I'm not trying to beat you up for missing either.
Oh no, it's okay. I don't have that much ego left anymore. Right?
I've got a friend that he's taken me out turkey hunting several times and I've missed, and he is an amazing turkey caller and he gets those birds. They come flying in, and because I can't do what he can do in that respect. And he takes his time, and in fact, one time he had a knee surgery and he hobbled across a cut cornfield on crutches one time. I had to I hauled everything out to the spot. I came back to him, grabbed the rest of the stuff, came back. I mean, he goes out of his way to get me out turkey hunting, and I've missed 3 times. I mean, like 10 feet
Yeah.
And of course he razzes me about it. And of course I know how you feel, right? In those moments, because you're just like, no way. How does this, this is what I do for a living. I shoot a bow and I tune bows, and this is what I do. How can that happen? But again, they're funny stories. It's always been good times every time we've gone out, and he razzes me, but he's never thrown his arms up and said, I'm never taking you out again.
Yeah. Right.
So in fact, he's introduced me to a few spots out in, the Sisseton, South Dakota area. He's invited me to go hunt out there and stuff on tribal land. And, again, just another one of those guys that, just got your back no matter what. Mm-hmm. And speaking of the fifth guy you were talking about, the guy that had grabbed the bat for you, it made me think of I can't remember what the podcast was, but I saw a reel on Instagram the other day, and the guy was talking and he goes, who's your 3 a.m. guy?
Mm-hmm. That's the dude.
Yeah.
Who's your 3 a.m. guy? When you call that guy, he'll come up out of his sleep and he'll pick that phone up, because you got those people, right, that'll call you and you're kind of like, I'll call him in the morning. Yeah. But if my friend Nate that lived with me for 2 months, if he called me at 3 o'clock in the morning, you bet I'm picking up that phone, and the same would go for Rick, because it's like, okay, he's not just going to haphazardly call me at 3 o'clock in the morning. Right. There's something's up.
There's a deal going on down. And yep.
Calling my boss. Sorry, I'm not going to be in today. I got to help my buddy, that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the stories that I've told today so far are the one guy that said, get your butt out of bed and go take that sunrise picture. Mm-hmm. And you both have seen the journey since that time.
Oh, right. Yep.
And what's interesting about it is the one that called me up at 6 a.m. and said, go take that sunrise picture was my best man in my wedding. And then Kelly married Cindy and I. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And those are things that it's interesting to have that journey, and both of them know what I was going through. Yeah. But both of them should know that I'm that 3 a.m. guy too. Mm-hmm. And it makes me feel fulfilled to know that they've seen that journey of the depths of wherever the dark places that you go. And then to go and find, because like I said, I wanted to get struck by lightning and everything's going to be better. And it wasn't going to, and that didn't happen. And like I said, this guy keeps on telling me in God's time, and I'm going, gee, many Christ, I don't know if I can walk 40 days or 40 years. It's like, I don't know if I can handle this part. And that's where I told you about, finally I climbed the mountain and gave belief. There's that time that switch has to come on, mm-hmm. and you believe that, it's going to take time, but you're going to learn. Yeah. Yeah. And to have both of them in that corner at that time, and to see the journey that I was going through, and then to have them at the wedding with Cindy and I,
right.
That is, it's not the end of the story, but it's probably the middle of the book. Yeah. And it certainly makes you feel good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's one of those things that brings sunshine to my life.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is, that's something that we hope that's contagious, right? Like we want to, like I want to see that for you, Rick. Yeah. And that's the joy of the relationship, right? Mm-hmm. So, I'm not always blessed to see the full circle, right? When I pour into people, this is something else that has come across my path, is that you've got seasonal relationships and you got lifetime relationships in your life. Mm-hmm. And don't try to make don't try to make a relationship something that it's not. So recognize the seasonal ones, invest in them, mm-hmm. but bless those people as they move on, right? And then you got people that are in your life for a lifetime. Mm-hmm. And those moments are awesome and absolutely a blessing, because for me, I've seen the full circle for Rick, right? I've seen I've seen a relationship that just exploded and basically puked life all over Rick, and he had to figure it out to the point where now he's got this really healthy relationship, and it's positive, and it's encouraging and foundational for him. And I got to be a part of that, like not just the yuck, but also now the joy and the celebration of coming full circle.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. So,
and that's the great thing about life, you know? And I just love those things. Our relationship, I reckon, showed me the path to surround myself with better people.
Yep.
And that's where I think that everybody, or anybody, I should say, not everybody, but anybody that has something that is bad in their life or causing them a struggle, to turn around and look and see where that struggle is coming from and start placing the right people to help you out.
And that's the how, right?
Yeah.
Like, so we've talked a lot about the importance of it, but how? Like, so you're a guy and you're out in the middle of life and you just feel like you're pulling this wagon all by yourself. How do you find these relationships? Like, where do you go to find that? Like, and then how do you know that's it? Like, those are big questions. Like, and as we're talking, those are the things that are going through my head. Like, what about somebody's listening that says, I want that, but I don't know how to get that. Like, I don't live where I grew up. My job takes me all over the place, or my job takes all my time. So where do I go to find that relationship that we're talking about, or even one of those five, right? Because it's not, we're not talking about a marriage or a wife or a romantic involved type thing. We're talking about a masculine relationship for dudes. So where do you find that? For me, it was going to a Triggers.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I knew I could connect there. It was the things that I love to do. I went to those places. I did those things. I was open to having conversation. Right. And in the moment it happened, or in the moment it took place. I met Tom Owen with my daughter riding on our 4-wheeler, going around looking for deer. He was in a truck. He stopped. We started talking, and next thing I know, like, he's one of those guys that's been in my life since Spearfish, right? Yeah. There's other things and other people in my life that have been there. I got a really good buddy named Kelly Rhodes, and he's a trout fisherman, man. He grew up down in Lebanon, Missouri, trout fishing the streams down there, and guided a little bit when he was as a young man. And we connected, and it was outdoor stuff, bow hunting and fishing and turkey hunting. Like, I loved to turkey hunt. And he was an Ozark turkey man. Like, he loved to hunt turkey. So we'd go turkey hunting, and it's just like those things that just begin to develop. And I think for most of us, we have a sense. We know when somebody's like blowing smoke, right? Well, I mean, we know, and we know when we've come across somebody that's just solid, man. Like, that's a solid dude I want to get to know, or I'd love to hang out with that guy more, or So I think those are really, really important things to begin to look for. Yeah. Right. And like any relationship, you can't force it. Right. No. But going back to the God side of this, he'll bring it together, man. I just believe that. Like, he'll bring it together, bring the right person along at the right time. And it's never going to be too late, and it's never going to be too soon. It's going to be exactly the right time. And yes, you're going to have to work at it. Like, you're going to have to, this is the tough part. If Rick had never decided to be vulnerable in Triggers, we wouldn't be having this podcast right here today.
We probably wouldn't. No.
Right.
No.
But he made a decision. He came into that believing at some level this was a safe place. And these guys do care about me, because it wasn't just me. Justin was there, right? Justin was there.
Yeah.
Because Justin, I looked at Justin And I've been going in there at least 2 years. It was because I said, and Justin, I've been praying for you and your wife too for the last 2 years, man. And he just looked at me like I was the oddest thing, right? And then we talked later. He was like, I can't believe that happened. Like that whole thing worked out that way, right?
Yeah.
And he sat there the whole hour and listened to us have that discussion. Like he didn't go, he was right there. So that all is important, right? It's important for him to be able to see what's going on here and to realize like this dude's for real. He's not some blowhard, right? And he already knew you. You guys were closer than I was to either one of them. But this to be genuine about it, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm going to be genuine about it. You want to. This is where I'm at. I want you first to recognize me as a human being that puts his pants on the same way any other person puts pants on. Yeah. Right. Normal person, by the way, because I don't know if you try to hold them up and jump out of bed into them, but one leg at a time for me. So I want people to see that I'm just this human being that's walking in this world and has a family just like you do and has relationships just like you do, and they're not perfect. Yeah. Right? None of it's perfect. And so I'm trying to figure this stuff out too as we go along. Right. And if I have something that I can give you that will help you, I'm willing to give it away. Right? Yeah. And so that's a big part of it. It's like to be genuine and to be real, like knowing who you are. That's the fulfillment, right? Yep. I know who I am. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I'm just going to chase that. And here's the thing, man. This is something that I've learned here probably in the last, 10 years, 12 years. When you start doing that, you're going to get pushback. Somebody's going to be the naysayer and say, you're wrong. This isn't right. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, man, I don't have time for that. Yeah. Right? I don't have time for that. And I'm not looking for another Rick, right? Because there's not another Rick Hansen. But I am going to be looking for people who are hurting and in need and want help. Yeah. Right? I'm going to be looking for that because I want to help. I want to help. Right? So I don't have time to go over here and talk to you about why it's right or wrong and get into an argument because there's too many people in the world that are hurting. Yeah. Yeah. They are. They're just broken. And that's what the world does. It just breaks you.
And it's interesting because I've had a lot of ideas since we've been together. I mean, I wanted to do something like this, and then, you go back and forth and you don't have what you think it takes to do stuff. And then we did a podcast on the range and we talked about Project Rick and still didn't click. And I had these Don't Die Rusty shirts because I was going to be the mantra of that. And then I thought, you know what? Don't Die Rusty sounds better than it's in that. And it was finally something clicked and it said, I need to do Don't Die Rusty. We need to do Don't Die Rusty. We need to get that out there. And it was another thing about it is in that time span where you say you find yourself. I finally found myself. It took how many years to really you're living a life, but you don't really know who you are. Right. And I found myself doing, like we were talking about earlier, like it's easy for some people to knock you down. Yep. Because that's the easiest thing to do is knock somebody down. It's harder to bring them up. Well, it's tough to see people that are fulfilled and chasing their purpose. Not a dream. It's your purpose, right? Like we like to talk about dreams, and I'm not against having a dream, but I believe it's when you begin to chase your purpose that you start to experience fulfillment, which leads to joy. Right. So even when tough times come, I still have joy because I'm fulfilled. Like you can't steal that from me. Right. I know who I am. Yep. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. And you can come against that all you want, but I know, right? There's a difference between I believe or I think to I know. Yeah. I know what it is. Yeah. And that's a journey, right? It is. That's the crucible. I think that's the importance of the crucible because it starts to... If you're not willing to take it behind the woodshed and kill it, life is going to start to weed it out, right? Yeah. Yeah. It will eventually cause you to die in that area, No,
that whatever that is, it's not your purpose, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's not your purpose that you're chasing. Life, if you don't choose to do it, life will take it. Does that make sense?
No, that does. And
Yeah.
it's interesting
Yeah.
because, I mean, all three of us are hunters, but it's interesting to think that, like, there was a time that I'm not afraid of death in the aspect of taking an animal's life because I'm going to eat it, for one thing. But I think that people, before our relationship, we were talking about purpose.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that where I'm going with this is now I forgot even where I was going with this, but what I'm trying to say is I think we go in a direction that we need to go to help people realize that they need to find their direction when we get comfortable with ourselves.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to do that when I know who I am, and that's a journey. I mean, I think it's developing, but I'm 53 years old now, so if I haven't figured that out, I'm kind of behind in this game we call life and everything, right? To know who I am, and I've known who I am for a long time, and God's continued to form me and remove the things that shouldn't be there and to replace that with something that should be there.
Mhm.
Right. So I really know who I am, and it's hard for me to help you start that journey or start walking down the journey if I don't know who I am.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what we end up seeing happen when the dysfunction pops up. It's, we got a bunch of guys getting together and they don't even know who they are yet. Like, so this, the formation of Don't Die Rusty. Well, 2 years ago, you didn't know, right?
No.
But now you do. See what happens? Like it's like, boom, I know now. And we can't do what we don't know. And so I can't move in a direction I don't know I'm supposed to move in until it comes to me like, this is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And,
right?
and it felt like my purpose.
Yes.
I'm
absolutely.
Maybe I like,
that's like this is fingerprints, Rick. This is what we're talking about. Like what you're doing. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no.
What you're doing is you're leaving fingerprints. Like this stuff is going to leave fingerprints. My hope is that somebody hearing us today, the light bulb goes off, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it absolutely changes their life.
Yeah.
Like they're moving out of misery into the sunlight and can feel the warmth, right? Like that's my hope. Like I just see so many people that are broken and hurt, and some of them don't even know they're broken and hurt. It's just been their life.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way they've survived. And we can all survive, but that's not living.
No.
Right?
No.
Surviving's not living. Surviving's just trying to get to the next minute, to the next hour, to the next day, to the next week.
It's filling.
Right? That's all it is.
It's just filling the days. It's not fulfilling the days.
Right. And purpose plays a big role in fulfillment.
Because I went because you can be happy and you can think you're happy, but there's a point that you have to cross that bridge to be joyful.
Right. I agree.
To find joy in your life, because you can say you're happy, but and you can be what you think is happy, but joy fulfills the life. Happy is filling the life to that point.
I was not happy. I missed 7 times. Right? I was not happy about that, but it didn't affect my joy.
No.
Right? Like I didn't just quit on hunting at that point and throw everything away. And truthfully, it's a good thing you were there, because after the 3rd miss, that muzzleloader would have went sailing probably. Right? Yeah. How far can I get this thing away from me?
Yes.
It didn't stop me from being who I am. It didn't stop me from chasing my purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Like just because I was unhappy in that moment and, dejected maybe, and like wondering what in the world is going on. Like that's just, those things happen in life all the time.
Yeah.
Where you find yourself in a circumstance or a situation or a point, and you feel like you failed, and you feel like you don't know what's going on around you. It's just chaos, right? That's the storm.
Yeah.
That's the storm.
Yeah.
Right? What do I do? What do I do? My hope is that, if you're listening to this, there's hope.
Yeah.
There is hope.
And we
right? You don't have to stop and stay there.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to let the storm blow you wherever it wants to take you. Right? Like there's hope. There is light at the end of that tunnel. There's an old saying that says, it takes as many steps to get out of the valley as it took to get into the valley. Right? And if we can remember that, like we feel like we've gone down so far, we can't go any further. Well, guess what? There's a way out. Mm-hmm. There is a way out, and you will start taking steps up. It's not going to be all right, fixed.
And I was hoping for that one.
Yeah,
but
that's a nice way to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't. Like the truth is, if we just get it fixed like that in a snap, then what do we learn?
Nothing.
Very little.
If we don't go on the journey, we never know where we've been.
Again, the crucible, the heat, the pressure, the pounding, all of that, right? Yeah. It refines us, and it refines our focus, and it refines our mind, and it helps us see differently. So that's huge. Like there's hope there in all of that.
Well, I know you're going to have to get to a basketball game here pretty soon, but we do ask one last question before we're finished.
Yep.
And I want to know what the good life is to you.
The good life to me.
What's the good life? Yeah.
Well, for me, it's family. Like we got 4 kids. 3 of them are married. And my oldest daughter and her husband have 2 kids, and they live here, which is really cool because I didn't think any of my kids would stick around. This isn't a hometown for them, right? Like we moved here when they were in school.
Do they live in an igloo?
They do not.
Since it's so cold up here in North Dakota.
Yeah, it's been cold. We're going to get a warm up. It's going to be 20 this week. Anyway.
Heat wave.
Yeah. So family's a big part of the good life for me. I love hanging out with, I got a grandson that's 3 years old, and he's starting to talk in sentences now. Oh, what a joy. Like that's an awesome moment to hang out with your grandkid and he's interacting. Like I love this stage, this toddler stage, when they can start to communicate and respond and mess around. So that's huge. My wife is great. And that's a big part of this. Like we're one kid away from being an empty nester, and it's really weird because he's 17, he's mobile. We don't hardly see him, He's busy, so it is kind of like we're there anyway. And so that's been part of the good life. Yeah. I just put a deal out on Facebook, my outdoor journey for 2023. Yeah, and to be able to enjoy that, and it's not just the enjoyment that comes from being out there and what you bring home, whether it's a fish or if it's deer or whatever it might be. It's not just that; it's the memories with the people you're with. For me, it's relational. Like so if I was to sum it up, I'd say it's the relationships, man. That's the good life. Like I've got some really solid son-in-laws and a wonderful daughter-in-law, and that's been huge for us because you never know. Oh yeah, right? You never know what your kids are going to do or how that's all going to work out, and it's been really good for us. So those relationships that I built with them. When I went to the hills turkey hunting, I took my son-in-law, Joey. He's married to Jessica, and that's the grandkids, right? Like that's who gave us 2 grandkids, made us grandparents. He'd never been turkey hunting, and he's from Brainerd, Minnesota.
Okay.
And so he shot his first turkey, man. Like I was there. I wish I had a camera in my hand, but I had a shotgun. Yeah. I should have had a camera. But he was just so excited. We doubled up. Like that was crazy. So he was just jazzed. Like, and so those little moments, like those are huge. Those are formative. Like that's a big part for me. So man, to me, the good life is the relationships that I've been afforded to be able to pour into and to be poured into. Yeah. Right. It's great times. Like I love that. Like be able to be out there and enjoy it with people that you enjoy to be around. Like that's a cool thing. And then to introduce people to things that they've never experienced.
For sure.
Just like I've had, like this year, I had a ton of opportunities for that. So I got a really good friend. I'm probably talking too much, but I got a really good friend named Mike, and we go out west into the Badlands every year and bow hunt. And he has a son who just graduated this last spring. And he goes, would you mind if Carson went with you guys? And I'm like, man, I'd love it. Like, that'd be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, well, will you do me a favor? Would you ask him to go? And I go, yeah. So I called him up and I said, hey, you want to go out west with us? Your dad can't go. Why don't you go?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, yeah, I'd like that. So he comes out and he's bow hunted a little bit, and he's one of these guys that he doesn't care. Like he's not looking for, he's getting into it. And so like he'll shoot the first thing that comes along or whatever. And so he gets out there first night. I've been watching these deer move for 2 days. And so we get him on we get in on one, and I'm like, he's going to come right up through here and you're going to have a 40-yard shot right over here, man. And I said, so get ready.
Yeah.
And he goes, are you serious? He goes, that deer's 500 yards off. I go, he's going to be right here in our lap well before the sun goes down. And so he goes, you don't want to shoot it? And I go, no, you're shooting this deer. And so he started getting, you could just see him go, right? like buzzing. It's just starting to build. And so the deer comes in just like, man, he read the script and he gets ready to draw back. And I go, wait. Can you see him? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got a shot? Are you sure you got a good shot? Yeah. All right, man, fire away. So he pulls back and the deer turns his butt to us and he's got to hold it. Right. And I'm like, he'll turn, just hold it. And he thought it was like 2 minutes. It was more like 31 seconds because I was videoing. Yeah. This is the time I had my phone out in his video. Yeah. And so he shoots right in front of it. And I was like, oh, man. And he's dejected. And I go, it's all right. We all miss. So if he hears this, he'll know I missed too.
There you go.
And so it did run off and stop, and he's trying to reload, and it didn't even know where the arrow came from. And when he pulled back the second time, his arrow fell off the rest and clinked again. It's that old, nothing right's going to happen, right? And banged against his riser, and the deer looked right at us and picked us out and then was gone. So he was really dejected. And I go, it's okay, dude. We'll get another shot. We'll get another chance, Yeah. And so later on, his dad calls me up and says, dude, thanks for that. He's had some horrible experiences with other dads. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. Fishing and hunting. And he goes, it's just been terrible for him. And he won't stop talking about that hunt. And I'm just like, that's what it should be about, right?
Exactly.
Like, come on, man. I missed. I've missed before. We've all blown it in the field. Yes. It's part of learning. Yeah. And the truth is, if we were to take tally a scorecard, we're losing way more than we're winning against these animals.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at a batting average and look at a hunting average, you're probably being in the 100s is better than a lot, really, Yeah.
Right. And he learned. And so I told him, I encouraged him, and I want to pass it on that way. And so that's part of these relationships, right? That we're building with what we love. Yeah. Like we should take what we love and use it to encourage others and use it to build others up. And it's just rarely seen. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, and maybe those things are going on, but you know how it works. Like you got to have 30 positives to counteract one negative. Yeah. So the negative gets brought out into the light, and you see all these goofballs. I'll be nice. Goofballs that are out there chasing the wrong thing. Yeah. And then when they don't accomplish, they miss the flowers. They miss the sunrises. They're missing the whole purpose of being out there. Yeah. Right. Definitely. Like, I'm not going to tell you that I don't want to bring a deer home every time I go deer hunting. Right. If I didn't, I wouldn't have a bow in my hand. I'd have a camera in my hand or something else. For sure. I'm not going to tell you that every time I go fishing, I don't want to bring fish home, because if I didn't,
if it was hunting or catching, if it was killing and catching, then you're missing out on the whole thing.
You're missing the point.
Right? It's called hunting and it's called fishing for a reason. It's not killing and catching.
Right. And there's a connection there. If people would be honest about it, there's a connection there that we need.
Mhm.
We need it. And so I want to encourage that. So the relationship. So the good life for me is relationships and being able to pour into those and to see people grow. That includes my own family, of course, really family oriented, especially at this point in my life. There's not too much that's going to pull me away from a basketball game or from family's important.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
I want my kids to know that, you
Mhm.
matter, you're precious, you matter. I want people to know that, right? I want you two guys to know that,
Mhm.
you are important, man.
Yeah.
So going back to just the way I believe, God tells me I'm important, and he made a statement through Jesus to show me that, and he chases me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, I grew up in Kentucky. I went to college in Kansas, ended up in the Dakotas. If you had talked to me at 18 and told me that was my life, I'd tell you you're nuts.
Mhm.
I wouldn't even know where the Dakotas were at that point, Right?
Right.
And so just understanding that I matter, right? We have too many people walking around that believe they don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And I want that's a big message for me today. If you're listening, I want you to hear this. You're precious. You matter. The Visa card commercials, priceless.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not the Visa card that's priceless. It's you. You're
Yeah.
priceless.
Yeah, man.
Priceless. You're important and you matter. And there are people that love you. You might not even have met them yet. That sounds weird, but you might not have met them yet.
Yeah.
There's people that love you and you matter to them. And so anyway, I kind of got off topic there.
No,
you're
It's the
good.
life, right?
That's the good life.
That's the good life.
I love
Right.
that. That's a great response. Yeah.
So
Do you have anything else, Ricky?
Other than that, I just want to say, thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure talking with you, meeting you. I'm happy to have a new brother in Christ.
Yeah.
And, we need to, we should probably do this again. I don't know, maybe we talk some more tonight. We'll see. But,
We'll see.
But yeah, I mean, we got a day ahead of us, and I just appreciate you, man. That this has been a great chat, and well worth the, I didn't tell you this, but this morning I woke up and 3:00 and I went out to my truck. It wouldn't start.
Oh shoot.
It wouldn't. And it might not start when I get back out here into the parking lot. But I text Rick and I said, the good Lord doesn't want me to travel today, man. My truck won't start. And I went to go just so he didn't think I was pulling his chain.
Right.
I take my phone out and I hit record and I go and turn the key and it fired up. And I got the video. I'll put it up.
That's awesome.
It fired up and I thought, okay, now, dear Lord, I know that it's probably irresponsible for me to do this, but I need you to look out for me on my travels because this has to happen today.
Yeah.
And so here I am.
Awesome.
So another thing that God did to bring people together, so.
Yeah. There's these moments, man. I don't miss them. Don't miss your moment. That's huge. And there's a series of them. Rick and I've been through some, and hopefully you and I will be going through some of those.
Absolutely.
That'd be pretty cool.
Absolutely.
It's good to meet you. And because I've heard about the two Ricks. I don't know if you know this or not, but I had a couple of young men go down to the Terry Peak shoot. Right. And they came back talking about the two Ricks, and I go, 2 Ricks, right? They came back here talking about that. Yeah. And then they said, yeah, Rick and Rick. And I go, was one of them Rick Hansen? Yep, I know him. We're buddies. No, you know him? They were you become some all-star to these two young guys. Yeah. And I was like, that's cool. I'm glad you got to be a part of that. And shoot, I've been trying to get down there for that since I moved here.
June 21st to the 23rd.
Yeah.
I know I always got something that pops up.
But in closing, I just want to say thank you for being my friend and my brother. And you'll always be the THP to me, the original.
The original. Rick, the only way I can answer that is thank you, man. These relationships they're one in a million for me. I mean, big. It's big stuff. So